Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Inspired Earth. I hope that everybody is staying safe with the atmospheric river in California raining and flooding the desert and Los Angeles and all the cities out there. I hope that everybody's going to be all right and that you enjoyed the rain while it lasts. Try not to enjoy it too much. So this week I have absolute crazy miracle rescue story at the end. It's hopefully going to be a movie or something. It's definitely going to be a book. It's I could only put a little bit of it because it's so long, so I hope that you guys go and read that and that you enjoy it. Otherwise, I have some pretty cool technologies. This week we've got kind of some funny stuff and then a lot of really cool technology that's going to be really cool to listen to. A lot of stuff on solving cancer and new technologies with medicine, so that will be exciting. All right, and we're going to start it off here with, could a giant parasol in outer space help solve the climate crisis? It's come to this. With Earth at its hottest point in recorded history and humans doing far from enough to stop its overheating, a small but growing number of astronomers and physicists are proposing a potential fix that could have leaped from the pages of science fiction. The equivalent of a giant beach umbrella floating in outer space.
Ahem! Ladies and gentlemen, I have placed in orbit a giant mirror that will reflect 40% of the sun's rays, thus cooling Earth. Observe. Problem solved.
Oh, that's a little bright. All right.
So basically, for the listeners, they put the giant mirror umbrella up into space and it gets hit by a tiny micro meteor and it flips upside down and then starts frying the people on the Earth. That's a big oopsie. And Futurama has predicted a lot of things like The Simpsons has, so this one is very interesting that they're talking about it and Futurama has already done it. But it has been talked about from a long time back, so that's probably why, is because it's been so far in the past that it's been talked about. I mean, 1989, I think, is whenever they say that concept first came out, and that is getting further and further away. The idea is to create a huge sunshade and send it far away to a point between the Earth and the Sun to block a small but crucial amount of solar radiation, enough to counter global warming. Scientists have calculated that if just shy of 2% of the Sun's radiation is blocked, that would be enough to cool the planet by 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 Fahrenheit and keep the Earth within manageable climate boundaries. Which, instead of just reflecting it, why don't we absorb it and try to pulse it back to Earth instead of just wasting it? I mean, that's the first thing that comes to my mind rather than just reflecting it back into space. But Futurama, kind of showed us what could go wrong with that. And honestly, another scientist that we're gonna have up next also basically says the exact same thing as Futurama, which is pretty funny. The idea has been at the outer fringes of conversations about climate solutions for years. But as the climate crisis worsens, interest in sun shields has been gaining momentum. With more researchers offering up variations, there's even a foundation dedicated to promoting solar shields. A recent study led by the University of Utah explored scattering dust deep into space, while a team at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology is looking into creating a shield made of space bubbles. That's interesting. Last summer, Istvan, an astronomer at the Institute for Astronomy at the University of Hawaii, published a paper that suggested tethering a big solar shield to a repurposed asteroid. It's creative. Now, another scientist from Israel Institute of Technology say they are ready to build a prototype shade to show the idea will work. To block the necessary amount of solar radiation, the shade would have to be 1 million square miles, roughly the size of Argentina. The shade that big would weigh at least 2.5 million tons, too heavy to launch into space, he said. So the project would have to involve a series of smaller shades. They would not completely block the sun's light, but rather cast slightly diffused shade onto the earth, he said. Dr. Rosen said his team was ready to design a prototype shade of 100 square feet and was seeking $10 million and $20 million to fund the demonstration, between 10 and 20, for 100 square feet. That's crazy. And that's... I feel like we could definitely have better use of resources and stuff. It's interesting. What I like about this is that it's so out there and that it's so extravagant and nonsensical and almost alarmist. I mean, I don't want to use the word alarmist, but I'm trying to think of the word to describe this. But it's so out there that it's going to get the public's attention. I feel like people are going to be like, oh, it's that bad that we have to do some crazy solar sail thing? Why don't we just do this instead? And I kind of think that that's the purpose of this, that it's a PR stunt to get everybody's attention, that they're like, wait a second, we don't actually have to build a giant sunshade the size of Argentina. We have better solutions than that. I at least think that that's what's going to happen. I'm not sure if that's their point. If that was their point, then that's pretty big brain. But I think that it is possibly their point. That it could have been. At least a little bit. The average temperature is on the brink of rising 1.5 Celsius over the pre-industrial average. That's the point beyond which the chances of extreme storms, drought, heat waves, and wildfires would increase significantly, and humans and other species would struggle more to survive, scientists say. So, Art Bell, one of the people that I have dedicated this podcast to and inspired me, talked about this exact thing, and he called it the quickening, that the storms would get more frequent and more powerful, and that's known as climate change. I mean, he wasn't trying to change the name of climate change. This is just what he had been saying for a long time, and he was actually a big proponent of climate change. Him and Whitley Strieber had made the book The Coming Global Superstorm, and that was made into the movie The Day After Tomorrow, which was a fantastic movie. I loved that movie as a kid so much. And I have right here The Quickening in my hands by Art Bell. And we'll just open this thing up real quick. So I just wanted to share that with Art Bell, that he had talked about that so long ago. And it says that a sunshade would not stabilize the climate. Supporters of the idea said that other climate mitigation strategies will have to be pursued. So basically, yeah, I don't think that this is even feasible. I think that this is really just something that's going to get people's attention. But it does say that in 1989, when James Early of the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory suggested a space-based solar shield positioned near a fixed point between the Earth and the Sun called a Lagrange point, 1 or L1, some 932,000 miles away, 4 times the average distance between the Earth and the Moon. There, the gravitational pulls from the Earth and Sun cancel each other out. Roger Angel suggests releasing trillions of very lightweight spacecraft at L1 using transparent film and steering technology that would prevent the devices from drifting off orbit. It's just like you turn the knob down on the sun, Dr. Angel said, and you won't mess with the atmosphere. A sunshade would be astronomically expensive and could not be implemented in time, given the speed of global warming. In addition, a solar storm or collision with stray space rocks could damage the shield, resulting in sudden, rapid warming with disastrous consequences. Time and money would be better spent on working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, with a small portion of research devoted to more viable and cost-effective solar engineering ideas. But sunshade proponents say that at this stage, reducing greenhouse gas emissions will not go far enough to allay climate change. That carbon dioxide removal has proved extremely difficult to realize, and that every potential solution ought to be explored. I mean, they kind of have a point there, but I feel like, again, we could do more realistic stuff. A fully operational sunshade would have to be resilient and reversible. In his proposed design, he said 99% of its weight would come from the asteroid, helping offset the cost. It would still likely carry a price tag of trillions of dollars, but that is far less than what we spent on military weapons. But the falling costs of space launchers and investments in a space industrial economy have widened possibilities, Mr. Goodwin said. The Foundation suggests using raw materials from space and launching solar shade ships from L1 from the Moon, which would cost far less than setting off from Earth. So here we go about the Moon again, and bases on the Moon, and them wanting to use that, and teleporting stuff from the Moon, or not teleporting, transporting. Their prototype would move back and forth between L1 and another equilibrium point, with the sail tilting between pointing to the sun and being perpendicular to it. Moving like a slat on a Venetian blind, this would help keep the satellite stable and eliminate the need for propulsion. That is a good idea, and that's really cool. Dr. Rosen said the team was still in the pre-design phase but could launch a prototype within 3 years after securing the funds. We at Technion are not going to save the planet, but we are going to show that it can be done, which is a really good thing, that you're going to inspire a bunch of people to try to get it going. So here we have Dr. Avi Loeb, and he's been in the news a lot, with the Galileo project, which it's going to talk about here, and a lot of the statements that he's made even before that. But the Galileo project was a success, which it's going to talk about here. When a meteor exploded over the Pacific Ocean on January 8th, 2014, a fireball released numerous molten droplets which landed on the ocean floor. We know that because the research team of the Galileo project collected some of these spherules in an expedition to the meteor site on June 14th to 28th, 2023. By now, our scientists analyzed and retrieved samples of the 850 spherules and identified a new class of differentiated elemental composition, never reported before solar system materials. Our findings were just reported in 2 new publications. Imagine yourself on the deck of an open ship which happened to sail just under the meteor's fireball in 2014. Given the rainy weather at that location, you might have an umbrella next to you, as I did during our expedition. In this case, your instinct would be to shield your body by opening the umbrella overhead and hope for protection against the rain of molten droplets from the meteor. The only problem is that your thin film making the umbrella would have been perforated instantly by the iron droplets, offering no protection whatsoever. This thought crossed my mind when I read yesterday a major story on the front page of printed New York Times regarding an initiative to protect Earth's climate from rising temperatures by sunshade, which we already saw how that worked out with Futurama, right? Erecting any of these megastructures in space would be very expensive and require major international collaboration through reallocation of funds from military budgets to peaceful purposes. Given the current political turmoil and risk for global war, this plan may appear as dreamy as the worlds of John Lennon. Imagine all the people living in peace. But we must keep in mind that the political impossibilities could become a reality at the times of despair, especially when catastrophe is looming. As a physicist, my concern is that the sunshade will be punctured through impacts by micrometeoroids and dust. A sudden destruction of the shape by a solid impactor could trigger a global catastrophe in a world that was counting on it being protected by a thin umbrella. Based on terrestrial data, impactors of centimeter size hit the Earth every 15 seconds. This suggests that centimeter size objects will be impacting the shade every 25 minutes at speeds of tens of thousands of kilometers per second, 10 times faster than rifle bullets, creating holes larger than their size through any reasonable layer of material. Over the course of a year, there will be 2 or 20,000 holes created by these estimated centimeter size impactors, separated out by about 10 kilometers. After a millennium, the shade will be perforated and resemble a colander, with holes scattered about 300 meters apart. Impacts by smaller particles are more common. It says that within 1 million years, the entire structure will be basically disintegrated, and that if they put it any closer to Earth, then our own garbage will destroy it even quicker. Recently, we put out the James Webb Telescope, and engineers detected more than 20 micrometeoroid impacts to the telescope, most of them inconsequential, but one with the size approaching 0.1 millimeters caused a dimple in the mirror. Following that, NASA adjusted the Webb telescope operations to reduce the frequency of micrometeoroid hits. The non-avian dinosaurs would have been first to advise us to watch out for impactors if only any of them survived, but unfortunately they were all eliminated from the surface of the Earth by a rock the size of Manhattan Island. Or fortunately, because I'm kind of glad we don't have a bunch of dinosaurs running around. But, I mean, Jurassic Park was a good movie. But here we have the picture of Avi Loeb here, Harvard University, and his accreditations are just huge. He's a brave man talking about brave stuff. And I'm sure we'll be talking about him again soon. Here we have space rock that exploded over Germany turns out to be very rare meteorite. And this was only 13 hours ago. Which a lot of this stuff that I put on the podcast, I try to make it like super, super fresh stuff. Freshly baked content every week. Sometimes it's not even 24 hours old. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's usually like under 72 hours. But this meteor literally just hit Germany, like outside of Berlin, a little bit ago, and it's going to say that in the article, so I might as well just start reading. In the early hours of January 21st, asteroid 2024 BX1 flew through the atmosphere over Germany, burning up and breaking apart about 100 kilometers west of Berlin, which is about 62 miles. It was only the 8th asteroid ever predicted to collide with the Earth before it hit the planet. That's crazy. Giving us a rare 95-minute warning. So that kind of gives you like an idea of what sort of warning we have for this to happen. 95 minutes is like nothing. 95 minutes is... I don't even think they would tell us, really. I mean, if they had 95 minutes, they told them, though. So kudos to the scientific community. This has led to scientific hunt for possible meteorites, and quickly one was found, which has turned out to be very rare. Art Bell would be all over this if he was still here. I wish that he was. He's here in spirit. I'm sure that he's looking down on us on this adventure and loving it. Researchers from the Museum of Berlin, as well as colleagues from the University of Berlin and German Aerospace Center, initially recovered the walnut-sized meteorite from a field out in the town of Riebeck, about 80 kilometers west of Berlin. Analysis of the rocks suggests that it is in a rare group of achondrites known as obrites. There are only 87 known samples of this type of space rock from 17 sites globally. This underlines the immense importance of scientific collections for research. So far, there is only material from 11 observed obrite falls in the collections worldwide. Obrites look very different from other meteorites. They are typically light-colored, and if they have a fusion crust, then they are brownish, a difference that stems from their peculiar composition. The team has now found 20 meteorite samples, the analysis of which is ongoing. Electron microbe probes of the first revealed the kinship to obrites. It contains hardly any iron, and the fusion crust, a thin telltale layer of quenched melt coating meteorites, and which typically allow identifying them in the field, look completely different than most of the other meteorites. Obrites are therefore difficult to detect in the field. The peculiar mineralogical structures seen in obrites suggest that their parent body must have had a violent history, not that their parent body is known. Several hypotheses have been put forth. One hypothesis is that the parent belongs to the solar system's inner asteroid belt that are thought to have achondrite surfaces, or it was possibly broken off a near-Earth object. A third hypothesis involves the planet Mercury. The samples were submitted for analysis on February 2nd. Hopefully we will find more out about these rare types of meteorites. This one really blew my mind. They use molecular jackhammers, quote-unquote, good vibrations to eradicate cancer cells. When I heard good vibrations, immediately I think of sound. Because it even mentions the Beach Boys in the article and their song Good Vibrations. Like right off the bat, it starts talking about it. But no, it's not talking about sound. But it is from Texas. Rice University scientists and collaborators who have uncovered a way to destroy cancer cells by using the ability of some molecules to vibrate strongly when stimulated by light. The researchers found that atoms of small dye molecules used for medical imaging can vibrate in unison, forming what is known as a plasmon when stimulated by near-infrared light, causing the cell membrane of cancerous cells to rupture. So they're doing this on cancer of the skin, and it says that 99% efficiency of lab cultures of human melanoma, and half of the mice that had melanoma were cancer-free after treatment. And It is a whole new generation of molecular machines that we will call molecular jackhammers. Rice chemist James Tour, whose lab had previously used nanoscale compounds endowed with a light-activated paddle-like chain of atoms that spins continually in the same direction to drill through the outer membrane of infectious bacteria, cancer cells, and treatment-resistant fungus. That's very interesting. Unlike the nanoscale drills based on Nobel laureate Bernard Veringa's molecular motors, molecular jackhammers employ an entirely different and unprecedented mechanism of action. They're 1,000,000 times faster in their mechanical motion than former Feringa-type motors. Near-infrared light can penetrate far deeper into the body than visible light, accessing organs or bones without damaging tissues. Near-infrared light can go as deep as 10 centimeters or approximately 4 inches, whereas regular light can only go into about 0.2 inches or a half centimeter. The jackhammers are aminocyanine molecules, aminocyanine, a class of fluorescent synthetic dyes used for medical imaging. These molecules are simple dyes that people have been using for a long time. They're biocompatible, stable in water, and very good at attaching themselves to the fatty outer lining of cells. But even though they were being used for imaging, people did not know how to activate these plasmons. I saw a need to use the properties of plasmons as a form of treatment, and I was interested in Dr. Tor's medical approach of dealing with cancer cells. I basically connected the dots. The molecular plasmons we identified have a near symmetrical structure with an arm on one side. The arm doesn't contribute to the plasmonic motion, but it helps anchor the molecule to the lipid bilayer of the cell membrane. So this little arm she's talking about, a lot of the amino acids and just stuff in the body is like Legos or puzzle pieces, and they connect in, and she's saying this little arm will connect in and give it more strength, structural integrity to be able to do this oscillation and moving up and down. This is the first time a molecular plasmon is utilized in this way to excite the whole molecule and to actually produce mechanical action and used to achieve a particular goal, in this case, tearing apart cancer cell membrane. This study is about a different way to treat cancer using mechanical forces at the molecular scale. And this was researchers at Texas A&M University, University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center, and everybody knows tardigrades. So scientists now think that they know why tardigrades are so indestructible. Tardigrades, also known as water bears, commonly survive in some of the Earth's most challenging environments. The microscopic animals are so extraordinary that they have even traveled to the International Space Station for research. The astonishingly hardy creatures are capable of entering a form of suspended animation, even for decades. And this is what they're known for as well. Under stress, in extreme cold, or other harsh environmental conditions, tardigrades' bodies produce unstable free radicals of oxygen and an unpaired electron, aka a reactive oxygen species, that can wreak havoc on the body's proteins and DNA if they overaccumulate. Yes, oxidative stress is the same physiological event humans experience when stressed. And that's why health experts teach you to eat blueberries and other antioxidants after having a hard work week, which is a really good idea. And I love berries. The survival mechanism kicks off when cysteines, one of the amino acids that form proteins in the body, come into contact with these oxygen-free radicals and become oxidized. That process is the signal that lets the tardigrade know it's time to go into the protective mode. The free radicals become, so to speak, a hammer used to smash the glass on a fire alarm. When we're looking at the list of crazy circumstances that these tardigrades can survive, space in a vacuum, high salt concentrations like when an ocean starts evaporating, The one thing that really connects all of these things were reactive oxygen species. It was actually a bit of a eureka moment. Over the past decade, researchers have started to understand that reactive oxygen species, free radicals that were once considered completely problematic, may actually be really important for our bodies to work and be able to adapt to different stresses. Earlier studies said that instead of free radicals helping initiate the process of protection against stressors, tardigrades were protecting themselves from free radicals. The body's production of free radicals, Smithers and her co-authors found, is instead part of the process of helping tardigrades protect itself by curling into a hard shell ball resistant to heat, cold, or other environmental factors. Smithers asked the student to head to a drugstore and get some peroxide, a common free radical. With Smithers watching the experiment on FaceTime, the student dropped some peroxide on a water bear to see what would happen. All of a sudden, it started squeezing in. Its legs started going into its body. It started shrinking down. It became the quintessential tune that we know to expect. Researchers believe that this discovery can lead to such innovations like the engineering of firefighter equipment that could create a protective shell whenever conditions get too extreme, or the development of better chemotherapeutics to destroy malignant tumors by interrupting the protective measures that can make cancer cells so challenging to kill. That would be superb, finding other ways that these mechanisms can be used to control cancer. Miller said he was impressed with Smithers' ability to imagine ways that tardigrade research could be implemented for cancer research in other areas. He said it takes another level of mind and thinking to find the translocation of one technique or combination of things to a very distant one. We need more of that, which is definitely very true. Ocean found under the Earth's crust. A massive ocean has been found under the Earth's crust, and there is a whole ecosystem under the surface of the Earth. Surprise! There's a whole hidden ocean that we've never found before. And double surprise, there's a whole ecosystem that we didn't even know about that's right beneath our feet. And I kind of wonder what else is underneath our feet and what other sort of life and ecosystems that we haven't found that's beneath there. How do we just find out that there's a giant ocean underneath us with its own ecosystem? That's just an insane statement. Findings show that between 410 to 660 kilometers below the Earth's surface, there's another water reservoir. Scientists believe that the water cycle involves all of the water on Earth, circulating between the atmosphere, oceans, and surface. Turns out there's a whole another one. The deep water cycle. That sounds so cool. Deep water. Water extends deep into the Earth as the bottom of the ocean's crust contains slides called subducts under neighboring tectonic plates of crust. Scientists who were studying earthquakes when seismometers picked up on shockwaves under the Earth's surface have found subducts sink into the Earth's mantle carrying water. Furthermore, scientists found that something was amiss in what they thought was solid rock. It turns out that there is interplay between surface water and the ocean underneath the Earth's crust. This mantle transition zone acts as large water reservoir through which water cycles. Underneath the crust, water is absorbed by a mineral and then travels back to the surface. It can travel through magma, erupting underwater volcanoes, or as a result of movement of tectonic plates. The mantle rock is called ringwoodite, which is a funny name. This mineral was discovered in 1960s on a meteorite as well as recently underneath the Earth's surface. It is bizarre we found that out in space, and that is beneath our ocean. It is a plastic mineral, and its mobility causes it to change structure. It plays a crucial role in mantle dynamics. Water is stored inside its crystals in a sponge-like state, which is in either solid, liquid, or gas. Which you have to take a moment for that one. Underneath the surface, scientists discover a whole new ecosystem by turning over volcanic crusts on the bottom of the sea in the Pacific using an underwater robot roughly 2,500 meters below sea level. Worms, snails, and chemosynthetic bacteria all thrive in places previously thought impossible. The ringwoodite is like a sponge soaking up water, and there is something very special about the crystal structure of ringwoodite that allows it to attract hydrogen and trap water. It's very interesting. And it says something here about only 1% of some. It had to have been mistranslated. This is from like a Greek thing, and it sucks. It's mistranslated right here, but it says that if even 1% of something would contain more water than all the oceans of the surface of the earth combined. So I don't know what it's talking about there, but that one sentence is mistranslated really badly. Recent discoveries such as this show how little we currently actually know about our planet. This sea keeps revealing its mysteries as it always has done so previously. That's just so cool. And how do we find that out just now? I don't know. Like, I want to see the animals down there. And what type of animal? I mean, that can get creepy. That's going to get creepy really quickly down there. I would not want to be down there. I mean, obviously the pressures are going to be nuts, but if we were to even somehow find a way to get down there, or you're talking about tunnels, it was talking about tunnels and magma chambers, crawling through the magma tubes. No. Give me a break. All right, boys and girls. This one is like kind of a lead. I would say this is kind of the leading story this week. I actually had to take some stuff out whenever I found this one because it is just so crazy, and I wanted to make sure that we had time to at least cover a tiny bit of it, because this has got to be made into a book or a movie or something. I mean, this is one of the craziest stories ever. And apparently there's an even longer version. This article is huge and massive. And there's no way that I had enough time to, read this whole thing. But I did have some parts that I selected because of the survival aspect of this rescue miracle story, which obviously you know that at least some of them survive by the fact that we know the story and that it's a miracle, right? And the fact that it was all kids, which we're about to find out, like there was no adults. So we'll get into it here. All these photographs are just absolutely spectacular. And this article I'm reading off of is The Guardian, and you can go and search that up. It says that there's an even longer version on a different website, and we're going to skip way ahead here. It says that some of the indigenous volunteers that were searching for the crash site were growing anxious. They had injured legs and were running low on supplies, so that even the rescue people were getting injured. The plane was in a vertical nose-down position when found on the forest floor. The Cessna's broken fuselage stuck out of the ground like a flagpole, and the propeller had snapped off. Packy saw that the canopy, 45 meters above the wreckage, was somehow unbroken. No wonder the aircraft had failed to spot the crash site. As Packy approached the plane, he recognized Magdalena and Murcia and Mendoza, and that they had been killed in the plane crash, that they were at the front of the plane, so they took the brunt of the crash. The searchers noted that the cabin door was open. Bags, clothes, and diapers were strewn about on the ground. Montiel realized it was possible that all the children had survived. And here you have the plane crash with a soldier guarding it. And he was convinced that the children were alive, but they had been injured in the crash, and if they had wounds, then infection was a threat, which is a really big deal in the jungle. Infection is not good, and children's immune systems operate differently than adults. I'm not really sure how that would play into the jungle. It might be beneficial for them, it might not, I'm not sure. That the infections would be a threat, but there were other dangers. She got word that her grandchildren might have survived the crash. Valencia thought of all the things that could have harmed or killed them in the days since. Jaguars, snakes, duendes. The jungle doesn't belong to us, she said. Sanchez estimated that if the children were alive, they had another 3 days, maybe 4. It was time for a new search and rescue strategy. The military called the effort Operation Hope. More troops and dogs were brought to the search area. Aircraft flew low, dropping food, lighters, and thousands of leaflets printed with survival tips. Pilots scanned the landscape with binoculars, searching for life. On Twitter, President Gustavo Petro tweeted that the children had been rescued. He described it joy for the country. But sadly, none of this was true. It isn't clear where the rumors began. Perhaps it was inevitable that amid the frantic, disjointed rescue efforts, misinformation would sprout from somewhere. Petro retracted the tweet later that day, but his announcement had caught the global media's attention. Journalists from CNN, the New York Times, and other outlets descended to Colombia to document the rescue mission in real time. By then, the rescuers were getting frustrated. At this point, the military is starting to look pretty foolish because the whole world is watching the military, and they're accidentally posted on Twitter that they have them and they don't. That's a big fiasco. And then everybody's just getting progressively sick and tired and injured. Their supplies are going down, so they just become increasingly more desperate. And it says that here they start turning to rituals because they start turning to the indigenous of the area, which is pretty incredible. The soldiers are having to change their search patterns, and each soldier will have to walk further every single day. Sanchez himself found himself wondering if the native customs were the missing ingredient after all. Valencia was telling reporters that a duende must have captured the children, and Sanchez decided to consult an indigenous woman he knew about the matter. He asked, what might a person do about a duende? The woman gave Sanchez instructions for a ritual involving bottles of alcohol arranged beside the river at night. Sanchez dispatched the order to Montiel. I'm Catholic, so I don't believe in those things, Montiel said. Still, he did as he was told, and here there's some pictures of the indigenous community. The ritual didn't yield results, but it marked the start of closer collaboration between the military and indigenous searchers. On Montoya's team, the soldier initially slept with their guns by their sides at night, fearing Roanoke and other civilians who had joined their camp might turn on them, but soon they were learning things from the indigenous counterparts, how to drink water from tree roots, for instance, and to build makeshift shelters from palm trees. The volunteers' ability to spot things out of the place in the jungle human tracks or say the remnants of food packaging was remarkable. They chewed mambe or crushed coca leaves to sharpen their minds and give them energies, and some of the soldiers started using them too. They were getting their coca on. The men hugged, and Yuli told Sanchez that it was surely the first time in history that indigenous leaders had embraced a Colombian general. President Petro had requested Yule's help in rounding up additional volunteers to help with the search, and Yule summoned members of various tribes, Nukak, Siona, the Nasa, Witoto. Sanchez agreed to dispatch military aircraft to pick up the new volunteers and bring them to the search zone. Munoz and Rubio were both placed with Montoya's men in the Destructor 1 group. Interesting. Munoz headed to the crash site and conducted a cleansing ritual, burning sweetgrass, cedar, and sage to assure Mother Earth that the volunteers were only here to claim what was rightfully theirs. He also asked for better weather to make the search easier, and for the next 3 days there was no rain. The sky was a beautiful, rich blue. Rubio consumed mambe and ambil, a thick tobacco paste used in indigenous medicine. He hoped doing so would help connect him with the jungle spirits. I asked him if it was okay for me to search for the kids, explaining that they were my family, he said. Rubio soon came to the conclusion, as Valencia, the children were being held captive by a duende. Over the next few days, the men turned up new clues, diapers, a pair of running shoes, and more footprints. But no one found the children. On 26th of May, the day Kristen turned 1, the searchers sang happy birthday to her wherever she was. Just so sad. I literally cried like 2 or 3 times reading this story. And it's like, it's so weird. It's about to get weird, guys. It's already weird, but it's about to get weirder. The children had been missing for a month. Many indigenous volunteers were injured or severely ill, and some abandoned the search. By now, some of Sanchez's commandos had walked more than 1,000 miles, and they too were exhausted. On June 4th, Montoya and his men were preparing for an 8-day break. Moments before they boarded a helicopter, Rubio asked them to get some yage, a powerful psychoactive brew commonly known as ayahuasca. According to Witoto belief, consuming yage allows access to ancient wisdom that can solve complex problems. Rubio suspected that this was the only way the searchers could secure the children's release from the duende. It was an unusual request, but in this mission, everything was a possibility. On June 9th, Rubio drank the yage and hallucinated for 45 minutes. In his visions, he met the children and the duende who was holding them. Rubio told the duende he was there to take the children, and it agreed to turn them in on one condition, that a spell be cast on the searchers. As Rubio sobered up, several of the indigenous volunteers reported feeling flu-like symptoms, including body aches and high temperatures. He was sure the ritual had worked, and he told the remaining searchers that they would find the children that day. As the sun rose, Munoz set out with a renewed conviction. He was joined by 3 other volunteers, Dario, Edwin, and Nicholas. The men searched all day. They considered turning back at dusk, but they trusted Rubio's words. 10 minutes later, they reached a clearing, and Kumarikitike heard something nearby. He stopped and told the group to be still. Moments later, he heard it again, the faint but unmistakable whimper of a baby. And then they have some pictures here. And this is them being loaded onto the helicopter, which is absolutely crazy. President Petro lauded the children's total survivor and the collaboration for the military and indigenous communities for the rescue. And then this is a little bit more from the children themselves about what was going on. It says that they were flying, and within an hour of them being in the air, the engine sputtered and the plane began to go down. Magdalena told her crying children to hold on tight when the Cessna hit the canopy. Leslie banged her head and lost consciousness, and came to. She could hear Kristen screaming. She saw Magdalena was holding the baby, and Leslie was yelling. Magdalena was motionless, and her eyes went to the back of her head. Leslie unbuckled her seatbelt and wrenched Kristen from her mother's arms. She used one of the baby's diapers to stem the flood of blood coming from her head. The smell of fuel filled her nostrils, and debris was scattered everywhere. Leslie saw that Herman Mendoza and Hernando Murcia were dead, but that Sonlini and Tien were unharmed. With Kristen in her arms and Leslie led by Solnin and Tien out of the plane a few yards away, she built a makeshift campsite, stringing up a towel and a mosquito net. Tien asking when her mother would wake up. Leslie worried that her brother was too young to grasp the concept, so she said she didn't know. Leslie knew it wouldn't be long before predators arrived, attracted by the bodies, so she gathered Magdalena's clothes and some farina. She packed in Mendoza's bag, juice, soda, and candy from elsewhere on the plane. She salvaged a few other items that seemed useful: scissors, a first aid kit, nappies, a baby bottle, and then she led her siblings west, using the sun as their guide. And here they have the 1-year-old pictures, which is just wow. The fact that it was the wet season in Colombia was a blessing. As they walked, Leslie collected rainwater in an empty bottle. The moisture also meant that the jungle was in full bloom. The fruit heavy and ripe on the trees. The children consumed Juan Soco, similar to passion fruit, as well as seeds from the palm tree mil peso. Leslie chewed the hard seeds in her mouth and then fed the pulp to Tien and Kristen. She also gave Kristen water mixed with the farina from the plane. The children moved locations every few days and hid in the tree trunks to get out of the punishing rain. Leslie and Solny took. Once, a poisonous snake came close to Leslie and she killed it with a stick. She was desperate to find help, but she never saw a trail that might lead to civilization and eventually became disoriented. Yeah, that sounds like that would happen in the Amazon. I would get really lost really quickly. When they needed rest, Leslie sometimes made a shelter from branches bound together with hair ties. She used the scissors to cut the branches. After she lost the scissors, she used her teeth. At some point, the children found one of the emergency supply packages the military had dropped, but most of the time they were hungry. At the night, they were also cold. When her siblings cried in pain, Leslie could only forage for food or wrap them in a piece of fabric. Despite the hardship, Leslie said that she wasn't scared, not until she heard her grandmother's voice. It was so loud, and she didn't understand where it was coming from. After that, she sometimes heard soldiers in the jungle, but Leslie didn't trust the men with guns. Her mother had warned her about the rebels that were threatening the family. When rescuers came near, the children ran away or hid. If she was holding Kristen, Leslie put her hand over the baby's mouth. The children kept moving for weeks, hoping to find locals who didn't carry guns, but by the middle of May, their strength had waned. Then, as the children told Valencia, a dog showed up. It stayed with them for several days. The children felt like it was protecting them. Then it vanished into the jungle again. I guess it was like when they were at their weakest, this dog came in. In the hospital, using crayons, Leslie drew a picture of the dog sitting under a tree next to a river, waving its paw as a yellow bird flies overhead. Solny drew a picture of the dog too. In both the images, the animal is black and brown with pointy ears. To the military, it looked like Wilson, the missing search and rescue dog. Wilson became a hero overnight, figuring prominently in the news about the rescue. It's possible the children imagined the dog. Malnourishment and fatigue can play tricks on the mind. Leslie said that she started to lose her mental faculties and felt her memories evaporating. Eventually, exhaustion prevented them from traveling any further. They huddled in one of the shelters Leslie built and prepared to die. When Leslie heard footsteps nearby, she was so depleted it was a struggle to breathe. Still, she was afraid and remained silent. Solney and Tien did too, but Christine was whimpered. The children might have never been found if it wasn't for that. Few things in recent memory have brought Colombia's population together like the successes of Operation Hope. President Petro, who is a leftist, and Ivan Duque, who is a conservative predecessor, both tweeted in celebration. Even the Carolina Ramirez Front issued a rare statement like, "Colombians all rejoice. We rejoice that the 4 surviving children of the plane crash may have been found alive." Or may have been found alive. Petro invited military and indigenous members of the rescue operation to the presidential palace to receive rewards for their exceptional service. The government's highest honor went to Sanchez for his leadership. Wilson, the dog, was given medal in absentia. Despite a month-long search effort for the military, the dog was never found. At his home in Bogota, Montoya keeps bag of mambe from Alicia Munoz and other indigenous volunteers. We figured out that we have a lot of things in common. And this is a picture of the military and the indigenous people. And this is one of my favorite parts about this story, as well as, like, obviously the children surviving, but the two opposing sides coming together and realizing that they weren't so different after all, and that they came together to save these kids. They succeeded, and it was a really feel-good story. This is a huge article. I mean, I had to skip past a lot of stuff just to, like, get into what I have, see if I have anything else. No, I didn't highlight anything else. It talks about how the children are doing a little bit afterwards, and just like some stuff about it afterwards. All the photos are awesome. The story was awesome. Another one of my favorite parts was one of the indigenous people, or the indigenous people in general, teaching the military how to eat and drink and not die immediately out in the jungle. That part was pretty funny. But this was just such a crazy story. And 40 days in the jungle, these kids were very smart. They're lucky that they had like a big sibling that was really smart, and as well, it's a testament to the quantity of the food in the Amazon. And we've talked about how the Amazon was manufactured in previous episodes, that the Amazonian people created the soil, and then they made a pattern of edible plants so that you could literally walk through thousands of miles and get food the whole time, and that it's manufactured that way. It's a megastructure. Amazon is a indigenous megastructure, if you think about it like that. And it's a utopian megastructure, and it's free, and there's no money involved, and you can just, and it's timeless, and you can just, these children lived in the jungle for over a month eating just stuff that they were just picking off everywhere. I mean, luckily they came in the right season. It says that, yeah, they came in the right season, but, and that this is just a very lucky story. I think that you guys should check it out. I hope that they make a movie off of this thing. I mean, this is nuts. And the fact there's a bigger article, I mean, this thing was really big, and I skipped through a whole lot of it. So if you want to find it, I'll post it. And also, I've got some really, really cool art that got made this week. So I'll be posting that too. And check out the art on all the social media. Tell me what you think. Drop a comment. Email me at inspiredearthpodcast@gmail.com. Also, let me know what you thought about that Amazonian children rescue and them living on the plants and stuff. What were your thoughts on that? I feel like I went through an adventure just reading it. That was really intense and emotional. I felt exhausted after reading it. I needed to go and and eat a cookie or something. That was intense.